A Villager's Tale, Book 1, an unofficial Minecraft series, written by Mr. Crafty, narrated by Steve Relish. Chapter 1. Marco woke up in his bed, just like he does every morning. He sat up and looked around his small room, just like he does every morning. He took a deep breath and smelled smoke. This was not just like every morning. Marco can't remember what exactly woke him up first. It was either the loud noise from what sounded like an explosion, or the flickering, fiery light dancing across his bedroom walls. He slid out of bed and ran to his window to get a better idea of what exactly was going on. Peering out the window, Marco found himself squinting. It was the middle of the night, but the fires were so bright it took a moment for his eyes to adjust. His village was under attack. This much was certain. What he didn't know was who was behind it, or how they were carrying out this assault. His village was in shambles. Buildings crumbling, those that were left standing, burning, trees tumbling, rubble raining down, chaos everywhere. As he took in his surroundings, he noticed his home wasn't left out. Chunks of the house were missing from the foundation. He craned his neck upwards and noticed flames flickering on the roof. Moving with the breeze, Marco felt the urge to help his people. But he was a kid. What was he supposed to do? He knew what he wasn't going to do. Just sit there and wait for whatever this was to come get him. He pried his gaze from the chaos, turned from the window, and ran to the chest at the foot of his bed. He threw on his leather helmet and grabbed his iron sword? Where was his sword? He racked his brain, quickly trying to retrace his steps. Kaboom! Another explosion rocked his house. It almost knocked Marco off his feet. The noise from the attack was deafening, as a cacophony of other explosions were heard in the distance. He ran back to his window, expecting to see an army marching through his village. He saw nothing but confused villagers running around, trying to check out the damage for themselves. And there was plenty to check out. Of course, thought Marco, they're trying to rattle us. It makes it easier to defeat us if we're not thinking clearly. It's what I would have done. Marco loved playing strategy games. To say he was obsessed would be putting it lightly. They were pretty much all he ever wanted to play. If he couldn't lead and conquer, he wasn't interested. He had always felt he was destined to become a general, a warrior, a leader, anything but what he was actually destined to be. Unfortunately for him, two harsh realities stood in the way of his dreams. The first was that his peaceful hamlet had no need for an army. The closest thing they had to a god was an old villager who relished in chasing the youngins off his lawn with a cane. The second, and most upsetting to Marco, was the fact that, in this village, professions were passed down from generation to generation, and soon he would be old enough to have his job passed down to him. Marco was going to be a butcher. He pushed the thought from his head. This was his time to shine. And just like that, he suddenly remembered where his sword was. Of course, I left it on the kitchen table. Where else? Filled with excitement and confidence, he half ran, half skipped to the kitchen. But the weapon was nowhere to be seen. Impossible, thought Marco. I know I left it here right after I finished practicing my techniques last night. A memory from earlier in the week flashed through his mind. It was his father, coming in from a long day of work, plopping down on a chair and laying his head on the table to relax. Then immediately, opening his eyes and realizing just how close he had come to poking his eye out with the tip of the blade. Furiously, he yelled, "I thought I told you to put your toys away, Marco! If I catch this thing out of place one more time, you won't see it again for a long time." Back in the burning kitchen, Marco glanced around hurriedly. Where would his dad hide it? Of course! Marco ran towards the cabinet above the sink and reached as high as he could, standing on the very tips of his toes. He was just tall enough to still be too short. This is ridiculous.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?